The massive Valtorian warship slid into docking position at Nexus 7, one of the busiest trading stations in the galaxy. Inside, Empress Talia stood perfectly still, her silver robes flowing like liquid metal. Her face showed nothing. No emotion. No weakness. That's what 3 years of ruling alone had taught her. Beside her, a small figure held her hand. Princess Lyra was only 6 years old, with large golden eyes that hadn't sparkled in a very long time. The child moved like a ghost, silent and withdrawn. The servants whispered that she was broken. That losing her father had taken something vital from her. Talia refused to believe it. But deep down, in the parts of herself she never showed anyone, she was terrified they were right. The station was chaos incarnate. Hundreds of species moving through the corridors. The insectoid Kravik clicked and chittered in their corner shops. The gaseous Veldari floated past in their containment suits. And everywhere, doing the unglamorous work nobody else wanted, were humans. Humans? The newest species to join the galactic community. Barely 50 years since first contact, and they'd already spread throughout known space like weeds. They weren't special. No telepathy. No advanced technology. No natural weapons or armor. They were just there. Working maintenance jobs, running small businesses, fixing things. Talia didn't think much about them. She had bigger concerns. The diplomatic tour was supposed to be routine. Smile at the station administrator. Pretend to care about trade agreements. Show the galaxy that the Valtorian Empire was still strong despite everything. Despite the assassination. Despite the whispers that she was too broken to rule effectively. But Lyra grew restless during the formal greetings. Children do that, even alien princesses. One moment she was holding Talia's hand. The next, she'd slipped between two guards and vanished down a side corridor. The panic was immediate. Guards scattered. Station security activated. The Empress herself moved with terrifying speed, her psychic senses reaching out to find her daughter. Lyra had wandered into a maintenance section, drawn by something she couldn't explain. The corridor was dimmer here, quieter. And there, cleaning one of the massive viewports that looked out into space, was a man. He was human. Maybe 40 years old, maybe older. Hard to tell with their species. He wore a gray maintenance uniform with David Parker, custodial services stitched on the chest. His hair was starting to gray at the temples. His face had the kind of lines that come from years of smiling, though he wasn't smiling now. He looked tired. Sad, even. He was just cleaning the window with practiced, mechanical movements. The same motion over and over. Like he was trying to polish away something that couldn't be cleaned. Lyra stood there, staring up at him. And for the first time in 3 years, something stirred in her chest. A feeling. A warmth. A sense of recognition? David noticed her after a moment. He turned, saw this tiny alien child in elaborate robes staring at him, and nearly dropped his cleaning equipment. "Whoa, hey there," he said, crouching down to her level. "You lost, kiddo? Where are your parents?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him. Really looking at him. And then, in a clear voice that hadn't been heard in years, she spoke. "He looks like Daddy." The words echoed in the corridor. Simple. Innocent. Earth-shattering. David blinked, confused. What? But the guards had found them. 6 heavily armed Valtorian soldiers rounded the corner, weapons half-drawn, ready to protect their princess from any threat. They saw the human standing near her and tensed. Then they heard what she'd said. And they froze. Because everyone knew. Everyone in the Empire knew that Princess Lyra hadn't spoken since the Emperor died. The best doctors, the most powerful telepaths, the wisest healers. None of them could reach her. She'd retreated into silence so complete that some feared she'd never return. Until now. Until this random human janitor. Station officials came running. The head of security. The diplomatic corps. And finally, moving through them all like a knife through water, Empress Talia herself. She turned the corner and saw her daughter standing there, looking up at a human in a maintenance uniform. And she heard those words echoing in her mind, repeated by the guards who'd arrived first. "He looks like Daddy." Talia stopped. Just stopped, like someone had frozen time itself. She was telepathic. One of the strongest psychic minds in the known galaxy. She could sense emotions, read surface thoughts, feel the unique signature that every living being carried. It was as natural to her as breathing. And from this human, she felt something impossible. An echo. A resonance. A familiar harmonic that made her breath catch in her throat. It felt like her husband. Not his thoughts, not his personality. But something deeper. The fundamental frequency of his presence. Like hearing a song you thought you'd never hear again, played on a different instrument. It shouldn't exist. Humans weren't telepathic. They couldn't generate psychic signatures. And even if they could, every signature was unique. As individual as a fingerprint. This was impossible. David stood there, hands still holding a cleaning cloth, looking between the small alien princess and the absolutely terrifying alien woman who was clearly her mother. And some very large, very armed guards who looked like they might shoot him at any moment. I didn't do anything, he stammered. She just walked up. I was just cleaning. I work here. I have clearance. Look, it's on my badge. But nobody was listening to his words. They were all staring at the princess, who had moved closer to him, her small hand reaching out to touch his uniform sleeve. You feel like daddy, she whispered. And in that moment, in a maintenance corridor on a trading station, something began that would change all their lives. The Empress, the princess, and a human janitor who just wanted to be left alone with his grief. Because David Parker had his own ghosts. His own losses. His own reasons for being thousands of light years from Earth, cleaning windows and trying to forget. David sat in a room that was probably worth more than everything he'd ever owned in his life. The walls shimmered with some kind of holographic technology. The chairs looked like they'd been carved from a single piece of crystal. And across from him sat an actual Empress, studying him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. He'd never been more terrified in his life. 2 guards stood by the door, their weapons humming with barely contained energy. Station security had scanned him 17 times. They'd checked his background, his employment records, his medical history. Everything. Looking for something that would explain what happened. They found nothing. He was nobody. Just another human trying to make a living far from home. You're shaking, Talia said. Her voice was surprisingly gentle for someone who commanded entire star systems. Yeah, well, David managed a weak laugh. Not every day I get hauled in front of royalty. I keep thinking those guards are going to shoot me. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. She said it matter-of-factly, not as a threat. Just a simple truth. I brought you here to understand what happened. My daughter hasn't spoken in 3 years. Then she sees you and suddenly she's talking. Calling you her father. I'm not though. I don't even know her. I know. Talia leaned back, and for just a moment, the Empress mask slipped. She looked tired. Human, almost, despite being very much not human. Tell me about yourself, David Parker. Why is a human working as a janitor on a station like this? David didn't want to talk about it. He never wanted to talk about it. But something in her eyes made him think she'd understand. Maybe because she looked like she was carrying her own weight. I'm a widower, he said quietly. Had a wife. Rachel. And a daughter. Sophie. She was 7. Was? Transport accident. 5 years ago. Earthside, between the city and the spaceport. David stared at his hands. Maglev train malfunction. 43 people died. My whole world was 2 of them. The room was silent. Even the guards seemed to soften slightly. After that, I couldn't stay on Earth. Everything reminded me of them. Every park, every restaurant, every stupid corner store. So I took a job out here. As far from home as I could get. Figured if I was surrounded by aliens and stars, maybe I could forget for a while. Did it work? Talia asked. No. But at least here, nobody knows me. Nobody gives me those pitying looks. I'm just the janitor. Invisible. That's easier. Talia nodded slowly. She understood invisible. She'd been trying to be invisible inside her own pain for 3 years. My husband was Emperor Krevdan, she said. We were bonded. Soul bonded. It's a Valtorian thing. Our minds connected on a level your species can't do. When you find your bondmate, it's like becoming one person in 2 bodies. You feel their emotions, their presence, always there in the back of your mind. Sounds intense. It's everything. Her voice cracked slightly. And when he was assassinated 3 years ago, it was like half my soul was ripped away. I felt him die. Felt the exact moment he stopped existing. And our daughter, she's psychically sensitive. She felt it too. A 6-year-old feeling her father's death through psychic backlash. David felt his chest tighten. God, that's awful. She retreated into herself. Stopped speaking. Stopped playing. Just existed. Nothing we did reached her. The best healers in the Empire tried. Nothing worked. Talia looked directly at him. Until you. I didn't do anything special. I was just cleaning a window. You exist. And somehow, that's enough. She touched a control panel, and a holographic display appeared. My scientists have been studying the recordings from the corridor. Running analysis on you, on the situation. They found something. The display showed waves and patterns that meant nothing to David. Humans aren't telepathic, Talia explained. But you generate something. A kind of background noise. Emotional resonance, they're calling it. Most species can't detect it at all. It's like psychic static. Okay? But when a human experiences profound loss, deep trauma, that resonance changes. It creates patterns. Signatures. She manipulated the display, showing two wave patterns side by side. This is my late husband's psychic imprint. The unique frequency of his consciousness. And this is yours. David stared. Even to his untrained eye, they looked similar. Not identical, but close. Harmonizing. You're saying I sound like your dead husband? Psychically? The odds are astronomical. Trillions to one. But yes. Your grief, your loss, the shape of your pain, it vibrates at the same frequency as his consciousness did. My daughter isn't sensing her father. She's sensing someone whose emotional pattern matches his. An echo. A coincidence that shouldn't exist but does. David didn't know what to say. It was too weird, too impossible. So what now? He finally asked. You know what's happening. Mystery solved. Talia was quiet for a long moment. I need to ask you something. Not as an empress. As a mother. Would you spend time with my daughter? Keep doing whatever you did today? What? Why? You just said I'm not actually special. It's just some cosmic coincidence. Because she spoke. Talia's voice was intense now, desperate. For the first time in 3 years, my little girl used words. She looked happy. And I don't care if it's science or magic or blind luck. If you can bring her back, even a little. I'm not a therapist. I'm not good with kids anymore. I haven't been since. Since you lost yours. Talia leaned forward. Don't you see? That's exactly why this might work. You understand loss the way most beings can't. You understand what it's like to have a hole in your life that never fills. David thought about his empty quarters. His routine of work, eat, sleep, repeat. The way he'd been just going through the motions for 5 years, not really living. What if I make it worse? He asked. What if I let her down? Then you let her down. But right now, she has nothing. You saw her. Silent, empty. At least with you, there's a chance. Talia's mask was completely gone now. She was just a desperate mother. Please. I'm begging you. Give my daughter a chance to heal. David looked at the Empress of a vast alien empire begging a human janitor for help. The absurdity of it almost made him laugh. But he thought about Sophie. His little girl. If there was an afterlife, if she could see him now, what would she want him to do? Okay, he said quietly. I'll try. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. Talia's relief was visible. Thank you. One condition though. Name it. You have to try too. What? David met her eyes. You're as broken as your daughter. I can see it. You're just better at hiding it. So if I'm going to try to help her, you need to try to help yourself. Deal? For a moment, he thought he'd gone too far. You don't tell an empress what to do. Then Talia smiled. Just a small one, but real. Deal. The first meeting was awkward as hell. David stood in a palace playroom that was bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. Toys from a dozen worlds lined the shelves. A window showed a view of 3 moons hanging in a purple sky. And sitting on a cushion in the corner was Princess Lyra, staring at him with those big golden eyes. 2 guards stood by the door. Talia watched from an observation room above, though David tried not to think about that. It was weird enough without an audience. Hey there, David said, sitting down on the floor a few feet away from her. Remember me? From the station? Lyra nodded but didn't speak. The moment of breakthrough had passed. She was silent again, withdrawn. Like she'd used up all her words and had none left. David pulled out a deck of cards from his pocket. Regular playing cards from Earth. You know what these are? She shook her head. They're for games. My daughter used to love card games. Want me to teach you one? Another small nod. So David taught an alien princess how to play Go Fish. It took a while because she didn't understand the concept at first. But slowly, carefully, she started to get it. And when she won her first game, something amazing happened. She smiled. Just a tiny one, but it was there. Over the next 3 weeks, David visited every day. Sometimes they played cards. Sometimes he showed her pictures from Earth on his tablet. Mountains and oceans and cities. Things she'd never seen. He told her about his home, about the animals, about how humans used to think they were alone in the universe. Must have been lonely, Lyra said one day. Her voice was soft, like she wasn't used to using it. Yeah, it was. But then we found out about all of you. Suddenly the universe got a lot more crowded. Do you miss it? David thought about that. Parts of it. I miss the rain. Sounds weird, but we had this thing called summer rain. Warm and sudden. My daughter used to run outside and dance in it. He smiled at the memory, even though it hurt. What about you? What do you miss? Lyra was quiet for a long time. Daddy used to read to me. Every night. He did different voices for all the characters. Made me laugh. It was the first time she'd mentioned her father directly. David felt like he was walking on glass. What was his favorite story? The Star Wanderer. It's about a hero who travels to different worlds helping people. Daddy always said that's what Empress should do. Help people. Her eyes got sad. But then the bad people hurt him. And he couldn't help anymore. David moved a little closer. You know, my daughter had a favorite story too. About a princess who was braver than any knight. Even when she was scared, she kept going. Kept trying. Because that's what brave means. Not never being afraid. Just not letting fear stop you. Was she brave? Your daughter. The bravest person I ever knew. David's voice got thick. She was scared of the dark. But every night, she'd still go up to her room by herself. She'd say, I can do hard things, Daddy. That was her motto. Lyra looked at him seriously. I'm scared too. All the time. Everything feels wrong without Daddy. I know, kiddo. I know exactly how that feels. Does it get better? David had to be honest. It gets different. The big hurt turns into a smaller hurt. And some days you can even be happy without feeling guilty about it. But you don't forget. You never forget. I don't want to forget Daddy. Then don't. Remember the good stuff. The stories, the laughs, the way he made you feel safe. Keep all that. But maybe also try to make new good stuff too. I think that's what he'd want. Lyra was quiet, processing this. Then she surprised him by moving closer and leaning against his shoulder. You smell different than Daddy. But you feel the same. Safe. David's throat got tight. He hadn't felt needed in 5 years. Hadn't felt like he mattered to anyone. And here was this alien kid, this princess from another world, trusting him with her pain. You're safe with me, he promised. I've got you. From the observation room above, Talia watched through cameras. She saw her daughter, her precious girl who'd been a ghost for 3 years, leaning against this human. Trusting him. Healing. And something inside her own chest, something frozen and locked away, started to thaw. She'd been watching all their sessions. At first just to make sure Lyra was safe. But then she kept watching because David's words helped her too. The way he talked about grief, about carrying loss, about finding reasons to keep going. It resonated. Later that evening, after David had left and Lyra was asleep, Talia found herself walking down to the palace gardens. They were beautiful, designed by the best artists in the empire. But she hadn't really seen them in years. Couldn't sleep either? She turned. David was sitting on a bench, looking up at the 3 moons. I thought you'd return to your quarters, Talia said. Tried. Too much in my head. He gestured to the bench. Want to sit? Or is that, like, against protocol? I'm still figuring out the whole royalty thing. Talia smiled slightly and Saturday. Protocol can wait. They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. Just 2 people sharing space under alien stars. She talked about him today, David finally said. Your husband. Really talked. That's progress. I know. I watched. Talia paused. Thank you. For being patient with her. For understanding. I'm not doing anything special. Yes, you are. You're showing up. That's more than most people manage. She looked at him. How did you do it? After you lost your family. How did you keep going? David was quiet for a long moment. Honestly? I didn't, not at first. I just existed. Went through the motions. It took me 3 years before I could even think about them without completely falling apart. 3 years, Talia repeated. That's how long it's been for me. Yeah, I figured. Look, I'm not a therapist or a wise person. But I learned something. You can't run from grief. I tried. Came all the way out here to space, worked myself into exhaustion, avoided anything that reminded me of them. Didn't help. What did help? Accepting it. The pain is part of me now. Part of my story. Rachel and Sophie shaped who I am. And yeah, losing them nearly destroyed me. But pretending they never existed, trying to forget, that was worse. So I started remembering the good parts. Started letting myself feel things again. Talia felt tears in her eyes. She hadn't cried since the funeral. Empresses don't cry. But here, in the garden with just this human janitor who understood, maybe she could. I'm so tired, she whispered. Tired of being strong. Tired of ruling alone. Tired of pretending I'm okay. Then stop pretending. At least with me. I've seen the worst of grief. Nothing you say will scare me. So Talia talked. Really talked, for the first time in 3 years. About how much she missed her husband. About the pressure of ruling. About the fear that she was failing her daughter. About the loneliness of being surrounded by people but truly known by none. And David listened. Just listened, the way someone who's been broken understands how to hold space for someone else's breaking. When she finally stopped, exhausted, he said simply, "You're doing better than you think. Your daughter is healing. And maybe, if you let yourself, you can heal too." Is that what you're doing? Healing? David looked up at the moons. Yeah. For the first time in 5 years, I think maybe I am. The festival was Talia's idea. A cultural celebration on the station to show unity between species. Music filled the corridors, merchants sold food from 100 worlds, and for once, everything felt almost normal. David walked beside Princess Lyra through the crowds, her small hand tucked into his. She wore a simple dress instead of her formal robes, and her face was bright with curiosity. 2 guards followed at a discreet distance, close enough to protect but far enough to let her feel free. "What's that smell?" Lyra asked, pointing at a food stall. "That's called popcorn. It's from Earth. Want to try some?" They stopped at the human vendor's cart. The old woman running it smiled when she saw them, probably amazed that an alien princess wanted to try her simple Earth snacks. David bought a bag and Lyra tried a piece, her face scrunching up in thought. "It's crunchy. And salty. I like it." "Yeah? My daughter loved this stuff. Would make it every movie night." "What's a movie?" David laughed. "I'll show you sometime. It's like a story but with pictures that move." They wandered through the festival, stopping at different stalls. Lyra was fascinated by everything. She'd spent most of her life in palaces, protected and isolated. This was freedom, even if temporary. David didn't see the man in the crowd. Didn't notice how he moved with purpose, how his hand slipped inside his coat. The guards saw though. Their training kicked in instantly. Down. The shout came half a second before the plasma bolt fired. David's instincts took over. He didn't think. Didn't plan. Just grabbed Lyra and turned his body, putting himself between her and the shooter. The plasma hit him square in the back and shoulder. The pain was unlike anything he'd ever felt. Like being stabbed with 1,000 burning knives all at once. He heard himself scream but couldn't stop it. His legs gave out and he collapsed, still holding Lyra against his chest. "David." Lyra's voice was terrified. "David, wake up." But David couldn't wake up. The world was spinning, going dark. He could smell his own burned flesh. Could feel wetness that was probably blood. Somewhere distant, he heard weapons fire. Screaming. The guards had engaged the attacker. Then other hands were pulling Lyra away from him. Safe hands. Guard hands. And David let the darkness take him. He woke up 3 days later in a medical bay that looked more like a luxury hotel room. Everything was white and clean and smelled like antiseptic. His back and shoulder felt like they'd been dipped in acid. "You're awake." David turned his head, wincing at the pain. Talia sat beside his bed, still wearing what looked like battle armor. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Empresses probably weren't supposed to cry, but she had anyway. "Lyra?" His voice came out as a croak. "Safe. Because of you." Talia leaned forward, taking his hand. Her grip was almost painful. You nearly died, David. The plasma burn went deep. If you were fully human, you'd be dead. The station's medical technology saved you. The shooter? Dead. My guards killed him at the scene. But we captured 2 of his associates. Her voice went cold. They're part of a conspiracy. Court nobles who want me removed from power. The same group that killed my husband. David processed that through the fog of painkillers. They tried to kill Lyra? No. They tried to kill you. Talia's hand tightened on his. They see you as an insult. A human janitor being given access to the imperial family. They wanted to kill you publicly, humiliate me, prove I'm unfit to rule because I've let grief make me weak. Are you? Unfit? 3 days ago, I might have believed them. Talia stood up, pacing. But watching you almost die protecting my daughter woke something up in me. Rage. Purpose. I've been so paralyzed by grief that I let these traitors operate in my own court. Let them plan and scheme. That ends now. She looked at him, and David saw something fierce in her eyes. This wasn't just an empress anymore. This was a mother whose child had been threatened. Someone who'd been pushed too far. I'm appointing you as Lyra's cultural guardian. It's an official position. You'll have quarters in the palace, security clearance, protection. You'll be part of the imperial household. David tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. That'll make me more of a target. I know. That's why I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now. Go back to Earth or find another station. Live safely. Or stay with us, knowing that my enemies will never stop coming for you. That every day might be dangerous. Why would I stay? I'm a janitor. I'm nobody. You're the man who brought my daughter back from the edge. Who reminded me what it feels like to hope. Talia's voice softened. And maybe, selfishly, you're someone who understands my pain. Who doesn't expect me to be perfect. I haven't had that in 3 years. David looked at the ceiling, thinking. His old life was simple. Safe. Lonely as hell, but predictable. This new life would be complicated. Dangerous. But it would matter. He'd matter to someone again. He thought about what he'd told Lyra. About being brave. About not letting fear stop you. When do we leave? He asked. Talia's relief was visible. As soon as you can travel. But David, I need you to understand what this means. You'll be under constant scrutiny. Some of my people will hate you for being human, for being common-born. You'll face prejudice, threats, possibly more attempts on your life. Yeah, I figured. David managed a weak smile. But someone's got to keep that kid laughing. Might as well be me. She's been asking for you. Every hour. Wanting to know if you're okay. Can I see her? Talia nodded and touched a control panel. The door opened and Lyra rushed in, guards trying to keep up. She ran straight to the bed, tears streaming down her face. You're awake. I thought you died. I thought the bad people took you like they took Daddy. David reached out with his good arm, pulling her into an awkward hug. Takes more than that to stop me, kiddo. I'm tougher than I look. You got hurt because of me. No. I got hurt protecting you. That's different. And I'd do it again. He looked at her seriously. That's what family does. They protect each other. Are we family? Lyra asked in a small voice. David glanced at Talia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Yeah, he said. I think maybe we are. Lyra buried her face in his shoulder and cried. Happy tears this time. Relieved tears. And David held her, ignoring the pain in his back, feeling something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Purpose. Connection. A reason to keep living instead of just existing. Outside the medical bay, station security increased patrols. Intelligence agencies began hunting the conspiracy. And across the galaxy, word spread that someone had tried to kill the Empress's new guardian. The game had changed. The stakes were higher. And somewhere in the shadows, enemies were planning their next move. But in that medical room, none of that mattered. Because a broken man, a grieving Empress, and a traumatized little girl had found something precious. They'd found each other. And they weren't letting go. 2 months after the assassination attempt, David stood in the grand ceremonial hall of the Valtorian homeworld, wearing clothes that cost more than he'd earned in his entire life. The formal robes felt ridiculous on him. He was a janitor from Earth, and now he was being officially recognized in front of the entire imperial court. He hated every second of it. The hall was massive, with ceilings that seemed to touch the sky. Hundreds of nobles filled the space, their elaborate outfits making David's fancy robes look plain. They stared at him with barely concealed disgust. A human. In their sacred hall. Being honored by their Empress. Some looked merely offended. Others looked murderous. Talia stood on the raised platform, wearing her full imperial regalia. She looked terrifying and beautiful, every inch the ruler of a galactic empire. Beside her, Lyra wore a smaller version of the royal armor, trying to stand tall like her mother. David Parker, Talia's voice rang out across the hall. You have been appointed cultural guardian to the imperial heir. You will advise, protect, and guide Princess Lyra as she grows. You are now a member of this household, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. David bowed, like they'd practiced. He felt stupid doing it, but this was important to Talia. Important to Lyra. So he played along. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'll do my best. The ceremony continued with speeches and formalities that David barely followed. He just wanted it to be over. But he noticed the looks. The whispers. Not everyone was happy about this. Especially not the group of nobles standing in the back, their faces twisted with barely contained rage. The real ceremony, David thought, would come later. When these people made their move. He was right. The attack came during the reception. David was standing awkwardly near a refreshment table, trying to figure out how to eat some alien food that kept moving, when he heard Lyra scream. His head snapped up. Across the room, 3 figures in ceremonial robes had dropped their pretense. Weapons appeared from nowhere. Energy blades, gleaming and deadly. They moved toward the platform where Talia stood. But one of them broke away, heading straight for Lyra. The guards were moving, but they were too far. Everyone was too far except David. He didn't think. Just ran. His back still hurt from the plasma burn, his shoulder wasn't fully healed, but none of that mattered. Some assassin with a glowing knife was moving toward a little girl who called him family. Not happening. David grabbed a ceremonial staff from a display. It was meant for decoration, made of some alien metal that was probably priceless. He didn't care. He swung it like a baseball bat, catching the assassin in the ribs just as the man reached for Lyra. The impact jarred David's arms. The assassin stumbled, surprised that the human had actually fought back. That moment of surprise was all David needed. He swung again, this time at the man's weapon hand. The energy blade clattered away. Stay away from her. David shouted, putting himself between the assassin and Lyra. The assassin recovered, pulling a backup weapon. A small plasma pistol. He aimed it at David's chest at point-blank range. You're an insult to the Empire, the assassin hissed. A commoner. A human. You don't belong here. Yeah, well, David said, breathing hard. Neither do you. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. David knew he was about to die. Knew there was no way to dodge at this range. But at least Lyra was behind him. Safe. Then the air itself seemed to explode. Talia's psychic power hit like a physical wave. The assassin's eyes went wide, then rolled back in his head. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. So did the other 2 attackers across the room. All 3 collapsed simultaneously, unconscious before they hit the ground. The Empress stood on her platform, her hands still raised, power radiating from her like heat. Her eyes blazed with fury. This wasn't the grieving widow anymore. This was the ruler of an empire, and someone had just threatened her family. Enough. Her voice echoed with psychic force, making everyone in the room flinch. I have tolerated whispers. I have tolerated plots. I have been patient while traitors operated in my own court. No more. She descended from the platform, moving toward the unconscious assassins. Guards swarmed them, securing the would-be killers. These conspirators killed my husband. They tried to kill my guardian. And now they've attempted to murder my daughter in my own ceremonial hall. Talia's voice was ice-cold. Execute them. Publicly. And anyone found to be part of this conspiracy will face the same fate. The nobles looked shocked. Some looked scared. Good. They should be scared. Talia turned to David, who was still holding the ceremonial staff, breathing hard. Are you hurt? No. Just scared out of my mind. You fought for my daughter. Of course I did. What did you think I'd do? Talia smiled then. Not her Empress smile, but something real. I think I'm beginning to understand why my daughter loves you. Over the following weeks, executions were carried out. The conspiracy was dismantled. Talia ruled with an iron fist, making it clear that the time for mercy had ended. Some nobles grumbled, but most fell in line. Nobody wanted to be the next example. And slowly, the palace became something it hadn't been in years. A home. David's quarters were next to Lyra's now. Every morning, she'd knock on his door and they'd have breakfast together. Sometimes Talia joined them, leaving her Empress duties at the door. Just a mother having breakfast with her daughter and the strange human who'd somehow become part of their lives. One evening, about 3 months after the ceremony, the three of them sat in Talia's private garden. Real grass from Earth had been imported, along with some of the flowers Rachel used to love. David's idea. The garden was becoming a mix of Valtorian and human plants. A blend of their worlds. Lyra was chasing some bioluminescent insects, laughing as they sparkled around her. She looked like a normal kid. Happy. Healthy. She's doing so much better, Talia said softly, sitting beside David on a bench. Yeah. She's a tough kid. She asked me something yesterday. About you. Oh? She wanted to know if you were going to be her new daddy. Talia watched his face carefully. I told her that's not how it works. That you're her guardian, her friend. But she insisted. Said you already act like a dad. David felt his throat get tight. What did you tell her? I told her that family doesn't have to be about biology. That sometimes the universe brings people together who need each other. And that if she wants to consider you family, that's her choice. And what about you? David asked quietly. What do you consider me? Talia was quiet for a long moment, watching her daughter play. I consider you the person who brought light back into our lives. Who reminded us that healing is possible. Who stood between my child and danger without hesitation. She turned to look at him directly. I consider you someone I trust. Someone I care about. Someone who understands me in ways I didn't think anyone could anymore. David's heart was beating fast. Talia, I'm just a human. I'm not royalty. I'm not special. I'm a guy who used to clean floors. You're the man who saved my daughter twice. Who makes her laugh. Who sits with me in gardens and doesn't expect me to be perfect. She reached out, taking his hand. David, I'm not asking you to be an emperor. I'm not asking you to be anything you're not. I'm just asking if you'll stay. Really stay. Not as an employee or a guardian. But as someone who belongs here. With us. David looked at their joined hands. Hers was slightly blue, elegant, alien. His was scarred, calloused, human. They shouldn't fit together. But somehow they did. I don't know how to be part of a family anymore, he admitted. I lost mine. I've been alone for so long. So have I. So has Lyra. Maybe we can figure it out together. Lyra ran up to them then, breathless and happy. David. David, come see. The bugs make patterns when you chase them. She grabbed his hand, pulling him up from the bench. And David let himself be pulled, let himself be part of this moment. This strange, impossible family. As they chased glowing insects through the garden, Lyra between them holding both their hands, David realized something. He'd come to space to run from his grief. To escape his memories. Instead, he'd found a reason to live again. Not a replacement for what he lost. Nothing could replace Rachel and Sophie. But something new. Something worth protecting. Worth fighting for. Worth staying alive for. You know, Lyra said, looking up at him with those golden eyes, you still don't look exactly like Daddy. No? Nope. You look like you. Like David. And I think Daddy would like you. She paused, thinking hard. Can I call you Dad? Not instead of Daddy. But, also? David's eyes got wet. He looked at Talia, who nodded, tears in her own eyes. Yeah, kiddo, David managed. You can call me Dad. Lyra hugged him, and Talia put her arms around both of them. Three broken people, from two different worlds, holding each other under alien stars. And somewhere in the universe, David hoped, Rachel and Sophie were smiling. Because he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. He was healing. He was home.